That's a funny angle. Okay, so one of the things that I've encouraged you to do on this channel and on Fortress Mental Health, because it assists with all mental health issues, especially in the times that we're living in now, is to develop some kind of a moral philosophy, which basically meant some kind of a morality-based or values-based philosophy, so that you have a filter, so that for yourself, it's not about finger wagging or you know, telling yourself off or anything like that. It's actually a form of protection. What's the protection? As you navigate your way through life and you find meaning in your life, you need to know what is good for you and what is bad for you. You need to have a very clear sense of what you're moving towards and what you're moving away from. When I talk about a morality-based philosophy or a value-based philosophy, I really mean a meaning-based philosophy. If you prefer it, you can think of it that way, so that you know what things mean. So that if someone comes to you and says, here is an idea, or here is a plan of action, I'd like you to engage in it with me, you have the ability to say, I know, based on my own values and my own morality and my own system of, my own map of meaning, to use the Jordan Peterson term, that's not for me. It gives you the power of refusal. It gives you the power to say, you know, yes, that is tempting, that's interesting, but I don't think it's for the greater good, or I don't think it's for my good in the long term, so that you can actually say no. I'm very concerned with, at the moment, I think one of the things that is happening systemically, broad scale, is that as people are being pushed into a kind of state of demoralization in the Yuri Bezmenov sense, and they lack any kind of a proper moral philosophy and ability to say yes or no, what happens is we slide into that kind of moral relativism where nothing means anything and everything is all and everything is kind of okay. You start to lack boundaries. Okay, so what's such a big deal about lacking boundaries? Isn't it good sometimes to dissolve boundaries between people, between things? If you're going to be creative, isn't all manifestation of creativity effectively a dissolving of boundaries? Like if I'm going to write as a different person in a different land on a different planet who's a different species, I have to dissolve boundaries. Can the dissolving of boundaries lead to understanding, empathy, positive vulnerability within a therapeutic context? Even, you know, sexual intimacy requires the dissolving of boundaries. Yes, yes, and yes. The spiritual experience is always a kind of dissolving of boundaries. That doesn't mean, though, that the dissolving of boundaries is always good. That is a failure of a system of moral philosophy. It's not always going to have a positive intent to dissolve boundaries. You must have the ability to say no. You must have the ability to refuse evil and to recognize evil and to say no to it. If you don't, you are vulnerable to evil. You are vulnerable to being preyed upon. Chances are high, probably 90 to 95% of people who are here, who listen to me, it's because you have been the victim of something. You've been the victim of some kind of psychological predator. We can call them narcissists, psychopaths, borderlines, whatever you want from the cluster B spectrum, whatever psychiatric language you want to use. Nasty pasties, you can call them, I don't mind. That at some point in whatever happened there, if you want to recover from narcissistic abuse and you never want it to happen again, you would need to refuse evil. You would need to see a thing that is attractive and tempting and seems to be a good thing and say no to it because it's not for your highest good, as determined by you, as determined by your value system. So if we don't have the capacity to see things as they are with clarity and to determine their value in accordance with a certain moral philosophy, we'll never have the ability to say no. It doesn't sound like a very good situation, does it? As a culture, if we have no moral boundaries whatsoever, we say nothing to anything ever. And we're effectively, by never saying no to anything, we're always saying yes to everything. If we're never saying no to anything, we're always saying yes to everything. So whatever snake oil salesman, whatever charlatan, whatever psychopathic predator shows up at our door, they don't even have to knock because the door's already wide open. How long do you think that can last? How long do you think that can last for an individual? If an individual plays that out, they say yes to everything. How long would you last? A day, a week, a month? If you get lucky, maybe a few months, but eventually something will kill you. Guaranteed. If you just walk through this world saying yes, 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 yes to everything, something or someone will kill you. You will die. You won't have it won't be like a bad outcome or a tragedy. You will die. So self-preservation requires a capacity to say no. That's at an individual psychological level. If we start talking in terms of groups and collectives and cultures and nations, it's absurd to think we can never say no. It's absurd to think we de facto have to say yes to everything, or else we are committing an act of evil. This is utter nonsense and can only lead to defeat. It's a truly poisonous, suicidal ideology. You have to be able to say no. You have to have your values. You have to have your morality. And when something tempting comes along, you have to be able to say, no, I'm not doing that. So that's why we develop a moral philosophy. How do we do that? We attempt to answer the big questions that philosophers in the past asked. Now, do we have to come up with really good answers? Do you have to beat Aristotle or Kant or Nietzsche? No, of course you don't. They're exceptional people, and that's fine. Good for them. Big brain, clap, clap. Me not have brain like that. Okay, but I still have to live in this world. I still have to live in exactly the same world they did, and I still face exactly the same challenges that they did for exactly the same risk. So I have to try. I don't care whether you come up with amazing, PhD in philosophy answers to what is good and what is bad to these questions. But you need to have something. You've got to have something. You can't have nothing there. And even if you don't come up with great answers, I think the effort to try to ask these questions is important, because it grows muscle. It grows moral muscle. It grows moral fiber. It grows a sense of resilience and boundaries. The capacity to say no takes strength. The capacity to say no takes courage. Soaking ourselves in the corrosive acid of moral relativism makes cowards of everybody. And that's what we have now. We have a world of cowards. Nobody wants to say or do anything for fear of the terrible repercussion. That's no way to live. There's no future in that, not for anybody. We have to take back this territory. We have to take back this ground. And the only way to do it is through adopting a good, strong moral philosophy, developing boundaries for ourselves, learning to say no, and having courage. Having some courage in the face of evil. So answer the question for yourself every day. What is good? What is bad? What will I put up with? What do I not put up with? What do I want? What do I not want? And then at some point, you should probably ask yourself the question, how should a human being live? What is a good way to live? What is a bad way to live? If I see myself, I've created a map, I've created a model for a bad way to live, and I've created a model for a good way to live, and I see myself drifting to the bad way, can I stop myself? Can I say, hey, we've already decided not to do that? If you can, you're in a much stronger and much more advantageous position. Courage is essential, absolutely essential. It is hard. It's always been hard. That's just life. That's just the way it is. It's infinitely harder, more painful, will induce more suffering, as the Buddhists would say, or as the ancient Christians would say, more suffering in a general sense. Our code for that in modern parlance is mental health issues. But dukkha is dukkha and suffering is suffering. Mental health issues is just another way of saying suffering. It'll be much worse if we don't face it. If we turn away from the danger, if we turn away from the threat and pretend that it's not happening and pretend that something else is happening and get lost inside of a solipsistic fantasy that only exists to make ourselves feel better for a short period of time, because that's all it can do. It's one little fantasy that buys you a little bit more time, that kicks the can a little bit further down the road. But ultimately, the same challenges, the same threats, the same risks, the same problems are still there when you awaken from that fantasy. So I wanted to remind everybody today that this is our work. This is what we must do. All of us, all humans have to do it. You already have a moral philosophy, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not. The only question is, how strong is it? And how courageous does it make you? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. Cheers.